What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boyz podcast, joined as always with my co-host, Landon Troyer. What's going on, man?
Not a whole heck of a lot. How's everything down south?
Things are good. We're hopefully, fingers crossed, at the tail end of our apartment living journey. We're actually going to check out a house tomorrow and get into that stage of life. And it's excitingly stressful. It's emotionally draining. We go back and forth on pros and cons. And apartment living is easy, but I think we're getting to the stage where it's time to get a house.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. I know this has been a little bit of a journey for you guys, whether to go the build route, but go the existing and buy route and all of that. So I'm excited to see what you end up coming up with, and obviously having my own room when we roll down to Florida.
Your own room, perhaps a podcast studio, so we can do these in person. You build one out in Nebraska. I build one out in Florida. Summers with you, winters over here. So hopefully we'll have some good, hopefully we'll have, some good audio and video in person here over the next, 12 months or so. But it's actually timely that we're talking about real estate, because we have Drew Halvorson today, Travis Brizendine today, as well as Rusty Johnson, and they're in the real estate space. Drew and Rusty work really close, particularly on the real estate side of things. And they also work very closely with Travis, who's on the mortgage side. And I really like this episode. A, I think they're great guys, but B, we had a bit of a focus on team building and how to attract the right people. It's not always about quantity as it is about the quality of folks that you're adding to your team. But what were some of the takeaways from you, Landon, on this episode?
Yeah, I think, for me, one of the cool things in hearing these guys' story, right, is, Travis and Drew go back years to elementary school and then through junior high, college, and high school, obviously. Their relationship has always been close. And then they end up going into similar, the same field, essentially, in different roles with Drew and Rusty doing the real estate transaction side as realtors. Obviously Travis running the mortgage side of things for them. But really just kind of how they've chosen their strategic partnerships. I think that was one of the big takeaways there, and being able to, have somebody that you kind of enjoy the journey with. And while Travis and Drew aren't direct partners on the day-to-day operations, they are actually partners as well on their own real estate portfolio. They've got, 25 either multifamily or single family units that they own together. I thought it was cool to hear their story about, being young single guys at the time and literally leveraging everything they had on, maybe a minimal balance sheet at the time to bet on themselves. So that was cool. And then, hearing, how Rusty and Drew kind of saw through the world through the same lens in the real estate space, and ultimately decided to come together, and now have built out an awesome team of 7 of them. I know from being in Omaha that, they're a very successful team, and just the service side of things, the little things that they do within their business for their clients is pretty cool. So number of good takeaways there.
Yeah, for sure. And there was one point that you mentioned, friends since elementary school. And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, this, that you either latch on to someone that you've known for a while and you're able to do amazing things together because you have a similar vision, you have a similar trajectory. But there's also another side to that coin where as you progress through your life, your circle of friends changes. And I know for me personally, that's been incredibly difficult, but it's also okay that happens. When you have a different vision and a different kind of goal for yourself, sometimes the people around you level up along the way, and sometimes they're totally happy and content where they're at, and that's totally fine. But it's always cool to hear someone growing up with someone that's also doing some cool things all the way to this point in their life.
For sure. I mean, I think you and I can relate. Obviously, reconnecting after years, it's just it's a good energy to have. There's an instant likability, credibility, trust with that individual. So, the fact that they've kind of carried that on has been pretty cool, while also running in separate lanes, so Yeah, there's a number of good takeaways that these guys bring to the table for sure.
Yeah. And before we dive into the episode, just a quick thank you to everyone. The support that we've received has been overwhelming. And it's always mind boggling to look at the stats of the podcast and be like, wow, there's hundreds of people, hopefully soon thousands of people, listening in, spending an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours with us. So just want to say thank you. And also would welcome any feedback that you have. We can oftentimes have blind spots in what we're doing, not just us, but you and other folks out there. So, that one tip that you have, the trick that you have, whatever it may be, is very well received. And also, if there's any potential guest, be it you or someone in your world that you think we'd enjoy chatting with, and they have a cool story to share, by all means, hit us up on social. You can email us. It's either, David at or Landon at businesswiththeboyz.com, and boys is with a Z. So we just welcome any feedback and any potential guests, that you have. But with that said, let's dive right into the episode and learn from Drew, Travis, and Rusty.
Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back.
So, Drew, diving right in, you had mentioned before we had clicked record, you're 33 years old, and I know a little bit about your backstory in terms of what you have going on now, but it seems like on the surface, you've had quite a bit of success early on in your career. How'd you get started in this space? Like, what did that sort of initial step look like?
Yeah. So, family background has a lot of real estate in it. And that is kind of what intrigued me to get into the industry. My grandfather owned a real estate brokerage development company and multifamily investment business growing up, and I spent summers with him and Christmas breaks with him growing up. So, was tagging along on meetings and appointments and seeing all of that. And it just kind of always intrigued me. Went to college, and from University of Nebraska, Lincoln was the first student to graduate with a management entrepreneurship double major. And just really loved my time there in the entrepreneurship space. And senior year, I actually met somebody who had graduated college and lived in Oxford, England, and decided to backpack through the US, as you hear of a lot of Americans that go backpacking in Europe. So met him actually in Lincoln, Nebraska, coming to visit some friends that studied at Oxford, England, that went to University of Nebraska. We kind of started shooting the shit, and he said, hey, you should come. I told him I was going backpacking in Europe after college, after I graduated. He said, you should come visit me. I own a real estate company there. We're doing some pretty unique stuff. He said, also, I've done some market research here, and you'd be stupid not to get in the real estate space here. Super great real estate economy here. And I think, if you grind, you could be super successful. Went over there, visited him, saw what he was doing. He was doing a lot of flips and commercial and residential investing, and really thought what he was doing was super cool. Came back, got my real estate license right away, and decided to dive right in as my first job out of college, integrating Travis, one of my business partners. So Travis and I known each other since elementary school, and him and I have kind of had this odd balance back and forth since then. Went to opposite elementary schools, but had friends at both. Went to middle school and high school together. Went to college, but went to college together at Lincoln, but joined opposite fraternities, and we ended up meshing our fraternities and throwing tailgate parties together and being social together. After college, graduated together, and both decided to get into the real estate space, but didn't want to be in competing spaces. So joined real estate on opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm in the sales side, real estate agent side, and Travis is in the mortgage business. So off and on, we've kind of integrated things together throughout our lives, but done it on opposite ends of the spectrum. So kind of bringing people together. And now we're able to work together 7 days a week. And a lot of people are like, God, you ever get sick with that guy? And it's like, luckily I don't. I mean, he gets sick with me, but he's got to deal with it. So Travis is in the mortgage space and is one of my preferred lenders. And we also own a real estate portfolio together. Let Travis kind of dive in. What did I miss?
I think you hit it all. Nailed it.
Travis and I have a portfolio. We decided to become business partners on the investment side of things, and started a real estate investment portfolluportfolio together where we own single family and multifamily investment properties. We've done a couple flips together, luckily we've been successful with that over the years. That kind of started out. How many years ago was that we did our first flip?
Like 7.
Okay. So 7 years ago, we decided to do our first flip, used lines of credit that we had, and leveraged equity that we had in other places, and decided to do a flip. Our accountant had advised us. We kind of asked our tax accountant, we kind of asked him and had him give us some tips and tricks. And he was the one that actually informed us, as a big tip for anybody out there, but you can 1031 exchange from a flip property into a long-term rental hold. So you can't 1031 exchange from flip to flip, but you can 1031 from rental to rental, and you can 1031 from a flip to a rental.
Interesting.
And so we leveraged that profit on that first flip property that we did into some multifamily and a single family, and found a real estate investor who we became good friends with. He was getting out of the space and selling off all of his real estate assets as he got older. And we leveraged with him for some seller financing and put all of our profit and equity into that. And that really kind of helped set us up for success. And now today we're at 25 units.
Awesome. And where do you fit in this equation?
So more so background or with Drew? Drew and I are business partners. We run a real estate team together. We're the Insight Group at Berkshire Hathaway here in Omaha. So he and I have been together for about 6 years now. I've been in real estate for 12 years. He's been in real estate for I think
a little bit
10 years. So pretty much same amount of time there. Kind of had independent backgrounds, and then met up on a long transaction. My story of getting into real estate is not as methodical as his was. It was much more of a shit show. I can dive in or I can hold off, but whatever.
Yeah, dive in.
No, please, dive in.
Yeah, I'm from Lincoln originally. In 2005, graduated with a criminal justice degree. Had a bunch of friends in Phoenix. Everyone said, "Oh, move to Phoenix." Moved to Phoenix as a single guy. Awesome time. Party city. Quickly realized that when you're making a $30,000 salary and having bar tabs at $300 a night, 4 nights a week, math doesn't always add up. Bought a house down there in 2005, and anybody who's familiar with that era knows kind of what happened afterwards. Bought a home for $215,000, not knowing what we were doing. Did a short sale 5 years later for $83,000. Along the way, I realized that 1, the world's not going to fall in your lap. 2, I really liked messing around with anything with the house, renovations, architecture, things like that. And so it was I had to bottom out, so to speak, and I became here I was, college grad, thought I was on top of the world. Not the case. I got a job as a server in a restaurant, thinking, 6 months later it would all pan out. Nope. 5 years later, I'm still there. Got myself out of debt. Realized I wanted to be in real estate, so came back to Omaha in 2011, and been riding ever since. Luckily, the irony of working at the restaurant and bottoming out, that's where I met my wife. So we've Drew and Travis are married in the real estate world in their investments. Me and my wife, we have our own portfolio of rental properties as well, and just been rocking and rolling ever since.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting, Rusty, that the thing that knocked you on your ass with 2008, I presume is what you were alluding to, where you bought the house for $215, sold it for $83,000. The very thing that knocked you on your ass, you're like, I think I actually want to do that full time. Why was that your your decision after that? Is it almost like, I want to kind of get back at this space and make money off of it? Or what was it that brought you back into real estate after, getting knocked down?
When I bought my house, I bought I was always a pretty social guy. We throw parties and, in college and stuff like that. Well, what I ended up buying was a townhome with a tiny living room, tiny backyard, in a part of town that I didn't like. And I was just going through the motions of being a buyer. Realtor, he was a good guy, but he didn't really ask any questions on my behalf. So I think I spent the first 2 years hating what we bought, and I wanted to change it. And so I was watching YouTube videos, watching things that I could kind of self-teach in terms of doing renovations and making things unique and fun. And I just realized that I like houses, and I know a lot of people say that, but it's like an addiction for me, anything with architecture. And in a perfect world, I wanted to be, this is before the show happened, but I wanted to be the property brothers. I wanted to be the same person that would buy the houses and renovate them. When I first got into real estate, I didn't even know what a split was. I went into this kind of aimless, hey, I want to work with houses. Quickly realized that it's a very different, path and industry than what people see on TV, than house hunters, things like that. But yeah, and then once you get in the world, as you guys probably know, you realize there's so many different avenues of what you can do with the space, with the networking, and it can just become a very awesome world. It's what you make of it, which is what was really attractive.
Yeah. So side tangent, my wife is actually a very decorated, successful interior designer. And one thing about Rusty is his knack and expertise for design and the architecture side and vision for space is very, very impressive. To be able to just walk in a space, one of the biggest value adds that we have, that Rusty and I have for our clients is, our clients, we try to preach that you don't always have to buy the Pottery Barn house. And so being able to walk into a space and Rusty can envision what this can be and how you can buy a property and make it into what you want it to be and save a lot of money and earn a lot of equity into that is a huge value add to our clients. But on top of that, just a testament to being able to have that vision and that eye for the design side of things.
And there's definitely that's definitely an art, I will say. Drew, as you know, I love building and GC'd my home. But that's what I lacked, right? I could see something visually and know I like that and I can build that, but I can't walk onto a blank canvas per se, and just start visualizing, from there. So no, that's awesome. Travis, fill me in on how you kind of came into the mortgage space. Was this something you had planned from the jump?
Not at all. I was 6 months out of college and back working at my Philly steak joint. And a guy came in every day to eat this rice bowl and double steak rice bowl. I remember the order. And I talked to him all the time. And I said, what do? You come in at noon and 2 and 1 and you look fairly successful. And he just was like, I'm in the mortgage space. So I said, my mom's kicking me out of the basement here soon. Can you just put in a word for me? And the next day I had an interview and I was hired within, on the spot. They were like, yeah, this looks like a good fit. I had to pass a mortgage test. So I kind of strung it out for a summer so I could study and still hang out at the pool before I put the boots on and went to work. But that's how I got into the space 10 years ago. And it's been pretty fruitful ever since. I've only been at 2 companies, so I was at a place for about 7 years, and there's just a lot of value that they both provided. And mortgage is some people just think a cookie cutter 20% down. And all you do is just take orders. And I've really come to realize in the last few years that there's an art to it. There's a cash flow game. There's an investment side of it that really speaks to me. And when I speak at that extra level, it really, people come back, they refer. I'm thinking as a long-term, investor hat as well as a consumer hat. And I don't think a lot of people get that. They just kind of, I don't know, watch a PowerPoint and turn into a mortgage loan officer the next day and go work at Rocket. And or a bank or something. I know I'm hating on my bankers, but sometimes that's just the natural origin. They're a teller one day and then graduate to mortgage school the next. But it was a grind the first few years. There's so much to know and learn, and there's not really a good playbook. So it's just taken a little while. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. Stumbled in and just been working at it ever since.
So I have
Travis
go
and
ahead.
I was gonna say Travis and I, obviously, like I said, going to high school together and whatnot. So it was kind of funny when we both first got into the industry. We have a high school group chat with the boys, and I remember one of them. I don't remember who. I'm not gonna name drop, but one of them was like, "Man, you and Travis have it made. You guys work for yourselves. You can go out and party at night." This is when we were 22, 23. Go out and party at night, and you don't have a boss clipping a stapler in your ear the next morning to be in a desk chair at 8 a.m. and you can roll into work at 9 or 10 and you work till 2 or 3, go play golf. And I remember I said, "Hey, I don't mean to make this sound opposite, but Travis and I are making 100 to 150 phone calls a day, and we're in our desk chairs at 7 a.m. and sometimes we don't leave until after dark. So your work hours in the beginning." It was a grind, like Travis said. It's a 100% commission job. So if I don't sell a house this month, I don't get paid this month. It can be fruitful, but also you got to work for it.
And I'm curious, Travis, go back to you. So I have a buddy in the mortgage industry, and he does really, really well. And I remember as rates kept dropping, his money was skyrocketing because it was just recycling and refinancing, all his previous homeowner clients that he's worked with in the past. And then seemingly overnight, with the rates rising again, the refi market just went away. And I'm curious to know, during this current shift that we find ourselves in with rising interest rates, what have you done to pivot and continue to, quite frankly, sustain yourself and your business and still help people get into homes even when rates are more than double what they were at its lowest?
Yeah, you got to be a technician and really understand the whole global financial picture of a lot of people. And so doing different rate buy downs, debt consolidation. I had a guy like a month ago that he had like 3 car payments, him, his wife, his kid, and like $70,000 in various other debts, personal loans and credit cards and stuff, and to the tune of like $3,000 a month. And he was going from a 400 house to an 800 house. And essentially his plan was to roll his equity from this house to that house. And I think everybody always earmarks this equity and all this money as it was in my house, and the 30-year fixed mortgage is the biggest, piece of debt I have. I need to get rid of it. And I'm all for taking as long as you can and borrow as much as you can. And so I rolled that equity, paid off all of his cards. So he went from a 400 house to an 800 house and saved $2,000 a month. And he came back to me and he's like, "Well, should I be buying $1 million house?" And I said, "That's up to you. But if I'm structuring it this way, I'm going to save you X amount of dollars." And he was a little concerned. Rates are high. And I was like, you pay that rate down a little more aggressive to the tune of $2,000 a month, and you might have like a 5 or 6% rate and not a 7 or 8% just because you're accelerating that. I also would advise him to maybe keep that money into some other investment vehicle, like Landon might. I think he's in the investment world. If you can get 10 or 12% in an S&P, who cares if you have an 8% rate? I mean, you're growing faster than you're negatively borrowing. So those are the conversations that I've had kind of to help get people into homes. And there's ways to buy the rate down temporary. We got seller credits right now. So you got to really speak to the market itself and say, hey, if homes are sitting, this is a great opportunity to take advantage of sellers or the opportunity itself. I had an appraisal come in $23,000 higher than what they're paying for it yesterday. So I'm working the numbers and I'm going back to them and I'm going to say, hey, listen, I know in a perfect world, how we had it set up was how you want it. And first and foremost, do it that way. If that's what suits you and that keeps you, you can sleep well at night. But I'm going to take that $23,000 and get as much as we can from the seller and buy the rate down or, subsidize that payment if the payment was a little on the high side for you. But some people are comfortable with that higher payment. So in that case, I say, could you use that money and not have closing costs or not have as much out of pocket? So really your return on investment, you parted ways with a 5% down payment. And anything above that is a higher return on investment because you're less exposed to cash out of pocket. So I'm looking at it from different, viewpoints, cash flow, ROI, and those things, and not just strictly rate and all that stuff. So
yes, I think what you're saying, Trav. I mean, obviously, I have a lot of conversations with clients, through this rate cycle that we're in right now as well, and understanding the cash flow. And really, the conversation I'm having with them is, yeah, the mortgage interest rates suck right now, right? North of 8%. But I said, when was the last time you got 5.35 on a money market yield, which is what we're getting right now? So your net spread is essentially, you're getting 5.35 on your cash. Yeah, it's going to cost you 3.5% difference on the mortgage rate, but really when you were getting zero on cash a year ago, right, and your rate was 3.5%, your spread's still roughly the same. So that's good insight there.
Rusty actually brought that up. We always spitball and kind of all talk amongst each other, but he had mentioned that too. Is there a better way to position that money that you're, pulling the equity out when you're selling? Can you get that somewhere else and kind of, arbitrage it in a little bit? But yeah, I think it's always a good conversation to have. It should never be left out.
I have a question, and this is for Drew and Rusty, and this is at the risk of being overly assumptive, and also curious to know if you've ever gotten this question, but what I kind of extracted from both of your backgrounds. So Drew, if I start with you had mentioned a couple main things. So one, you come from a family that has a real estate background and already invested in multifamilies, I believe you said. Then you mentioned something about backpacking through Europe, right? So with that, let's say that your foundation is, starts here, right? Yep. In terms of your backing. And then Rusty, again, being assumptive, you talked about, making $30,000 a year, spending more, than you made, getting hosed on the house, going and working in the restaurant. Let's say that in comparison, your foundation starts, a little bit lower, right? So first question would be, are my assumptions accurate? And then if so, how has that helped or hurt your guys' partnership and your ability to work together given presumed different upbringings?
I would chime in real quick because I do know Drew's upbringing and family background a little bit. Drew had a great relationship with his grandfather, but I will say that, Drew, you can speak to this as you want, but
where I was going.
I was going to say the level playing field, it was probably more of a level playing field than what
it actually was. Yeah. So I guess another unique kind of thing about the three of us. We actually have all three been business partners at one point. We all flipped a house together, but on the other term of that, we were all, kind of raised by single mothers as well. These guys have siblings. I don't have siblings. But yeah, definitely started from ground zero, had no prior connections, locally to the industry. And so, starting out was definitely hard, but, it just kind of have a very, positive, approach within yourself. And it takes a different type of person, to be your own boss and to be, an entrepreneur, I guess. So
I guess to run it back then, knowing, because I didn't know that about the rest of you. I mean, maybe we flip that question on its head has having to start at the bottom and be kind of grinders and, grow up in quote unquote, the non-traditional household type setting. Somebody who lost his dad at a young age, I can relate as well. I mean, I think sometimes that turns us into grinders. I mean, and I think I'm assuming, again, does that make you guys better together, right? Or how does strategically aligning with each other, do you feel like gives you guys the advantage? Because obviously you guys were all successful enough to do this on your own, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, my background is, we didn't grow up like poor by any means. We didn't have a lot of money. Parents were divorced. They both, worked at factories. So I can say a big part for me was just getting that work ethic. My mom, she's like one of my best friends. Dad, didn't have the greatest relationship with him. Nonetheless, he was a hard worker. I started my first job, paper route. Then I worked at Amigos, which is a local, fast food chain. People don't know. Kmart. I actually, a couple months ago, I listed like all the weird jobs that I've had like throughout my life, repossessing cable boxes.
Shout out to Time Warner Cable, Lincoln, Nebraska.
All kinds of stories. So, I mean, I think for me, like, my parents never gave me direction. I mean, right out of high school, I got a license in massage therapy. I went to massage therapy school because I thought I was going to go to physical therapy school. There was no, I was certainly surrounded by love. But it wasn't like, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about this. And I think, fast forwarding to where, Drew and I met, or, similar people in the industry, Travis, I don't know if it's necessarily enough. I mean, I know what my drive is, it's, I think I was always trying to improve what I didn't have. We grew up, 3 of us kids grew up in a 2-bedroom home. My mom's still there to this day, 53 years later. But it was, I think it's the hard work and it's the ambition. And that's one thing to where, when I met up with Drew, when I met up with Travis, and the people that I would say we network with and work with are the people that are ambitious. And, some people do have the money on there, but, or start with money, but a lot of people, whether you start or don't, they still have to, continue to pick up with it or they're going to phase out. So I just think it's the mindset, the hard work, the willingness to, get kicked down a few times and say, hey, we're going to get right back up. For me, I can say that's probably what's been the driving force.
What would you say, getting back into real estate? I feel like there's, myself included, a lot of people out there that real estate is intriguing as it relates to building up an investment portfolio. And someone like myself, you hear about the real estate industry when you build up your portfolio as a passive stream of income. And then you hear other people saying, hey, it's all about passive. Like there's a lot of work involved. And then there's people on the other side saying, hey, no, if you have systems and processes in place, it can become passive. And then there's situations of, well, is now the right time to buy? Do I need all cash to make the numbers pencil out appropriately based on the higher payments and what the area comps are in terms of rent able to be collected? So I'm curious to know, like, when you got your first property, like, what was that process like? And if we can juxtapose that to the current market conditions, how has the game, the rental space changed since your first property?
Yeah, I'll start with this for Travis and I, and Travis, you can butt in, but I also do want Rusty to answer this question because his portfolio is very, very unique, and how him and his wife have acquired their properties and what they've done most recently is super cool. But Travis and I, so our very first flip, Travis and I leveraged every single bit of equity we had in anything, and put it on the line and flipped a house. And kind of Travis and I's motto the entire time through our whole, business partner venture through the rentals has always been, the money's in the buy. You got to buy it right. And if you know that you buy it right, you'll never be upside down. I guess at absolute worst case scenario, which luckily we've never been in that situation, you'll always get out break even, at minimum. Travis, like I said, Travis and I leveraged everything we had, lines of credits, cash, and
assume you guys were single at this time.
Yes, we were both single at this time. Yep. Flipped a house. And our tax accountant had advised us that, hey, you can 1031 this flip into a long-term rental. And so we went out and found 2 fourplexes and a single family home all on the same plot of land. And like I said, it was an elderly gentleman. Ron Keller was his name. And he was actually a ex real estate broker here in town, owned Continental Realty here in Omaha for a long time. He honestly believed in us, 2 young kids trying to start their real estate portfolio. And so he took a risk on us, and we appreciate that to this day. He did some seller financing for us. So we seller financed, it was 0 down, interest only for 3 years at 5% interest on one property. And then we had one property, actually 2 of them, one of the fourplexes and the house. And when we closed on that seller financing, we bought the other one with traditional financing. Again, this was it 6 or 7 years ago, Travis?
Probably about 6
years ago. And these fourplexes in this single family home, we were 6 years younger, and it was our first one, and we were just coming out of a flip, and they all needed completely gutted. And so our plan was, we're going to take this one by one, and we ran the numbers, and we said, after renovation of each unit, this is what the 1 beds can rent for. This is what the 2 beds can rent for. We have a little bit of land back here that we can develop into maybe some storage units or something down the line. The single family home, once fixed up, can rent for this. We know the cash flow from day one, because it's all on the buy side. So the cash flow from day one, but we can use that investment to renovate. Took us about 18 months, but we renovated every unit by unit, one by one. And once we got all through all 8 units, the 2 fourplexes, we, I guess, just did it right, but they all rented for what we thought they were going to rent for. Travis and I had this mindset, 6 years younger, that, hey, we're both in the real estate space. So we can self-manage and manage these ourselves. So we can save on the property management side. Well, looking ahead, we've bought plenty with cash and refinanced. We've bought others with just straight financing from day one. We held one in all cash until just very recently. What was I getting at there?
You were talking about you were managing it all yourself.
Yeah, we're managing it all ourselves, and we thought, this is great. We'll be able to self-manage forever because we're both in the real estate space. We know what we're doing. By the time we got to 20 units, I had gotten married and was expecting our first kid, and we were both gung-ho in our day jobs in the real estate space, and we kind of had a come to Jesus moment with each other. And it was just like, hey, I think now is the time to integrate property management, which we never thought we'd do. But that was a good growing pain for us. It's something we never thought that we were going to do, and never thought that we would need, because, we know how to self-manage. We've managed up to 20 units on our own now. But that was just something that we needed to continue to grow. We couldn't continue to take the calls at 9 o'clock at night for a flooded toilet, or, whatever at 7 a.m. For whatever, even throughout the day when we're out showing houses or writing mortgages or whatever. So it came as a cost of doing business. And so luckily it goes back to all in the buy. We knew that we had that margin to be able to integrate property management. So we talked to and interviewed a couple property management companies. Now today we're at 25 units, and we have a property management company that manages everything for us. We're still pretty, probably more integrated than they'd like us to be, but we're still integrated with the properties pretty intimately, and still keep track of everything as you have to do. You can't just set it and forget it and take hands off. But I think the other part of your question was continuously growing or
the market. Just how the market's different.
Yeah, Travis, you want to spear that?
I just think the numbers just don't pencil out as well. And I think back in the day, you could, just buy something to buy it, and then 6 months later, it's worth a lot more. I had a friend that acquired like 150 properties in 18 months, and he was just buying, fixing them up for a little bit, pulled the money back out, did it again. And so at that point, that market it's very different than today, when stuff's just not penciling out, and you're buying stuff just, you got to looking at depreciation and some things, not as much on the cash flow. Can we value add? Can we, pull the money, just re-leverage it down the road. Just, you got to get a little more creative. So I think there's definitely opportunity there. It's just, you could kind of throw shit at a wall and hope it stick back then. And now you really, it's a little more difficult.
And before we go over to Rusty, because Drew, you teased that Rusty has a pretty cool scenario with him and his wife and their portfolio. But before we go in that direction, are you finding now that people who are building out their rental portfolio still are mainly cash buyers looking for a place to park money and get the depreciation, get the appreciation, and then just create a cash flow stream? Or are you still finding that people are, mortgaging out of, their rental property that they're buying and even losing money for the long-term hope that the property will increase and interest rates will adjust? Like, what are you seeing today in terms of people's strategies to build this out?
Probably 3/4 one way, a quarter the other way. There's still a quarter of the people that are out there that are doing the house hacking or the Burr method, and buying a 3 or a 4-plex and living in one of the units and fixing the other ones up and then moving on and doing that again. But a majority of people, yes, are buying and leveraging cash and some holding in cash. I just sold a property that a out-of-state investor bought. And I was asking his agent, hey, how's this pencil out for this guy? And he's like, well, he plans to hold this thing in actual liquid straight cash for at least 2 years. And he's fine with that until he refinances it out. So, that's somebody with some pretty deep pockets. He said he'd bought 4 in the last 45 days here in Omaha. And so, some people are buying in straight liquid cash and holding in that. Some people are buying in cash and refinancing right away. Obviously, that's a little bit hard with the rate environment right now. But again, if you can make the buy side work, and there's also other options. You don't have to just buy and rent it out to a 12-month tenant now. You can go short term. There's either an intermediate term. There's short-term or medium-term rentals for traveling nurses now that's really hitting big all over the country, where it's that 3 to 6 month. And you can even break that down. There's ones that those nurses want furnished. There's ones that those nurses travel all over the country with all their stuff, and you don't have to furnish. So there's ones that come with Wi-Fi and everything. You pay all that in, and you can make a margin on the internet. You can make a margin on the utilities. You can make a margin on everything. There's tons of different methods now, whereas there really wasn't that, 10 years ago. It was really just either a month-to-month lease or a 12-month or 24-month lease. There wasn't really the medium or short-term lease option. So, I think a lot of people are buying with cash right now, whether it's liquid cash or line of credit cash or whatever. The days of seller financing had kind of gone away the last 3 years. I think that's probably going to start coming back a little bit in the next couple of years, which I think is good. It'll give people options, and Travis can probably speak to this super quick, but there's been some openings in what lending options there are in the investment world too. Just recently, they've bumped down to somebody who's buying a multifamily and going to owner occupy it. You only have to put 5% down now. You can buy a 3 or a 4-plex. If you're 20 years old, go buy a 3 or a 4-plex with 5% down, move into it, renovate the units, refinance with all that equity after you've renovated the units, and have your 20% down and walk away with your cash, walk away with 15% more cash than what you had going into it. That's a no-brainer. There's other vehicles out there like that that people can be utilizing and using to their advantage, besides just having to be forced to think that they have to buy in cash.
Interesting.
Awesome. Rusty, what's your portfolio look like, and help us understand kind of how you got started?
I guess I got to live up to something. I don't know. It's nothing too crazy. No, so you had asked about kind of mindset back then versus now. Of course, I bought my first one with my wife in 2016. Of course, the guy that mentored us, his name's Fred Tischauer. I call him the godfather of real estate. He's the one that mentored a lot of us, a lot of people in the Omaha world. Fantastic guy, incredibly humbled, always, just giving back. Back then, I think a lot of the stuff back then still applies today in terms of, taking the financial piece out of it. You still have the same conversations with people of, oh, I've always thought about it, but I'm always afraid of, this or afraid of that. And people still have those same phobias. Now, getting into the financials of it, of course, I mean, looking back, why didn't we all buy, a million properties in the last, 10 years? Because we had no idea. 2016, oh my goodness, that price is so high from what it used to be. 2017, oh my goodness, that price is so high. And we just kept doing that to where everyone thought the prices were just going to come down. I think now working with people, a lot of it's more effective planning. So, to Drew's point, okay, if you're not a cash buyer, what are your options? Our portfolio, me and my wife, I mean, we started, buying, essentially doing the BRRRR method. I assume probably most people know what that is, but if they don't, it's, the buy, rehab, rent out, refinance, and repeat on there. So we did a lot of that. We have all single families. Most recently, we've invested in our first short-term rental. We're making this one like incredibly nice, incredibly unique, because again, the mindset, the plan has to shift a little bit. Okay, we're paying more for property. We might be paying a higher interest rate. How do we combat that? All right. Well, if we don't get the long-term, numbers that we want, bringing in $3,000 a month for just, what the standard rent might be. Well, if we do like the Airbnbs and the midterm rentals, we can, 2.5, 3, 4x that, potentially on there. And then people say, oh, well, isn't the short-term rental saturated? Not necessarily. I mean, aren't we saturated with restaurants and saturated with, you name it out there. But if you have a good product and a good service, I think that's what people want. They want a nice place. So they don't want to, maybe there's a market still for people in the, Goodwill furniture for an Airbnb. That's fine. That's not our motto. We go for the funky, creative, cool, Instagrammable type things. And I think that is where, a lot of our world's going is, that appeal for things like that.
So let me ask you this. If you get into the short-term, midterm thing, again, it's the finance guy in me. And same thing on the property management side of things with Drew, you and Travis, what are they taking for a rip? I mean, obviously you're factoring that into what you're charging, but what's kind of their hand in your pocket on that? Is it a percentage? Is it a per stay? How does that all work?
Yeah, it can vary. Again, every market's going to be a little bit different, right? So some of your Sun Belts, you're probably going to see quite a bit higher, your Scottsdales, things like that. We've seen in Omaha as low as 5%, and then we've seen, as high as 25%. I don't think the 5% person knows that 5% is pretty darn low. But again, I don't know if they're, only doing A, B, and C versus doing, all the way through Z on there. And that's certainly something to keep in mind, just like anything else of leveraging. Right now, I self-manage all of our rentals, and I've got really good relationships with the tenants. But, there's plenty of times I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? But then I've also turned a lot of my tenants into buyers, again, providing a nice house, a nice service, responding to them. They're eventually probably going to become buyers, at a certain point. So I look at it holistically. Certainly have to factor in the numbers on there, but it comes down to what is your debt service. And that we were having a conversation about that yesterday of, well, a person's doing their own cleaning right now. They're doing their own management until they hit a certain break-even point on there. So it is a case-by-case basis.
So does Airbnb, have you listed yours yet? What do they take for a rip? Or will you list on there, I guess, when you get the short-term rental ready to roll?
Yes. And there's so many different mindsets out there. So again, I am not going to claim to be an expert in that world. My wife's actually been it was always her desire to do the Airbnb type model. Essentially, you want to get it out there, right? And it's just like starting your own business. You want to get reviews. You want to get, so a lot of times the strategy is you price it a little bit low just to get people out there to sign up. Look for those 5-star reviews, become that super host on there. And then once you get to a certain point, then at that point you can just say, okay, well, we have a portfolio where we can build a website and we become searchable. So there are different mindsets, but I would say generally speaking for most people, that's going to get your foot in the door. That's going to get your exposure out there just because it is so traffic, kind of like Zillow. And then at that point, you make the decision, once you kind of have it down. We like to get our hands dirty for a little bit, understand how it works, makes us more valuable. I think, Drew and Travis can attest to that. If we're talking about clients for investments and whatever, the more that we've done and know and can reduce the fear factors or just be honest with people, that makes us more valuable to us and anybody else.
The short term, well, actually, no, I'm going to start the other way. The long-term rental or the standard 12-month rental is more affordable on the property management side. more affordable on the property management side, but less profitable, I guess in the grand scheme of things, looking at this as a whole, less profitable than the short-term rental. Short-term rental and mid-term rental, your property management costs are higher because you're flipping tenants more often and there's more potentially more wear and tear on the property. But your profit margins are normally higher as well. But can also come with a vacancy that can give you a headache.
Yeah, straight up, you're probably looking at 5 to 6% typically for long term, and let's call it 10 to 20% for short term.
Okay, good to know.
Gotcha. And how many people, Rusty and Drew, do you guys have on your team with other realtors? I want to pivot towards team building, but for clarification purposes, how many folks are on your team?
Yeah, so we're a team of 7. We have a full-time admin, and then Rusty and I who own the team, and we still sell day to day and handle clients as well. And then we have 5 agents on our team.
Couple full-time,
Cool.
couple part-time.
Yep.
Cool. So I have a good friend of mine, Nick, who's he was an advisor, a financial advisor, got into real estate, and he's doing really well. He's $1 million plus earner, and he focuses on cash buyers, helping them find investment properties in Massachusetts, where I grew up. And one of the things that he's wanted to do but hasn't yet been successful in is building a team of folks, underneath him that he can mentor, help them build their businesses. But he hasn't yet been successful in that. He hasn't been able to attract, the right folks. So I guess my question, given that context, is I would imagine, you get your real estate license, you don't start building a team right away, but you figure out how to do it yourself and then start building a team. So what was that process like, going from selling your own properties in your own business to then attracting other people to the two of you to join under your umbrella?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to direct this for Rusty to start. I'll pick up, but Rusty's the one who actually started the Insight Group. Like we said, we were on that team together, and Rusty broke off first and started the Insight Group, and hired a full-time transaction coordinator and had an agent join him. And then I joined in down the line, and that's where kind of some more growth happened. But yeah, starting out. Yeah, I mean, when I broke off, it was kind of the, oh shit, what am I going to do? Type thing, because, to your buddy's point, and if, I'll jokingly say or ask, he's, $1 million earner, maybe a team isn't the right thing for him. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe it is to grow on there, but if he's already doing that, we've got plenty of single agents here that do fantastic, and they don't want it. For me, it was a few things. One, the first person I started working with, he's now, been a very good friend, still with us today. My whole thing was making sure I could give back to him. We have a lot of real estate teams in town, where people join a team and it's like, okay, go sell. And it's like, there's no direction. There's no, accountability, no, training, things like that. So for starting the team, for me, it was, not everything was crystal clear, of course. It was more so, can I work well with this person? Can I train them? Can they help me out? Like, if I'm too busy, and it's got to be a mutual, relationship. It can't just be all about us as team leads. So, kind of fast forwarding now, when we hire people, that's one question I ask myself, can we actually, do something for these people? Can we train them? Can we make them better producers? And, every year we're trying to implement more and more things to justify being on our team. We don't actively recruit. People typically come to us organically and say, hey, we've met you from this or that. We'd like to, maybe think about joining. And recently we had to decline a couple people because, there's so many things going on right now, market conditions, seasonality, things like that, but just also time. We both have young families. For us to take somebody else on, overpromise that we can take care of them, that's not something that we also want to do as well and chase them out. Yeah, like Rusty said, all of our growth has been organic. It's all been agents that have come to us wanting to join our team, and probably a good testament to our work ethic and our reputation within the industry here in Omaha. But we don't have ads out there looking to grow the team. We have no aspirations to be a 20 agent team. We want to make sure that our agents have value. They can always get a hold of us. We're always there to help them and support them. they need help on a listing agreement or running a CMA or, prepping a buyer's packet, whatever it is, we're there. We're both in the office, at least 5 days a week, and encourage our agents to come in and learn from underneath of us as well. But yeah, it has been, we had a conversation a couple weeks ago, like Rusty said, and it's a tough conversation. But at the end of the day, like it's not all about numbers and it's not all about money. And we just felt that, we couldn't do that agent justice at this time where we're at, 6 months down the road. That's our goal is, we will be ready to grow again, potentially. But right now, we don't want to do anybody a disservice, and we don't want to look at somebody as just a number.
Yeah, and to answer directly your question too, that's kind of the rounded mindset of it. But your friend who had asked about, starting a team. That's always a question that people have. It's like, what is a team going to get you? Or, we've seen people go from single agents to teams back to single agents because they have more success doing that. So, it really comes down to, what's the void that's missing? Or is it just that desire to kind of keep growing that business and keep scaling it up and find yourself in a certain position? Because obviously that's a very, different mindset and also admirable too.
For sure. Travis, what's your team look like? Or, are you kind of on an island over there and eating what you kill, or do you have a team in place? What's that look like in your world?
Yeah, just we say LOA, loan officer assistant. My processor is extremely heavy in doing a lot of the back end stuff, and so I've relied on other people, which was the biggest difference between where I started versus where I'm now. I'm under a branch manager who is a really business savvy guy. He's got a bunch of other businesses outside of mortgage, and he's got probably 5 or 6 people that work under him. And it's taught me, it's taught me that you should really only do what you're good at, and get out of the weeds. And my volume doubled the first 12 months I was here. And speaking of the market was also pretty good. But it was more than what the market would have normally warranted. And I think it's a testament to just getting out of the way. I was kind of control freak and wanted to always hold the file and make sure everything was airtight. But in reality, I realized my processor processes 10 times better than I. So why am I spending my time and energy on this? I can have those higher end conversations and educate and get my software to speak the language to these borrowers so that they can understand that cash flow conversation a little better. And I spend now an hour with you and you get 10 times the value that you did than if you were to call a Rocket or a bank person, So I think the team is a great leverage tool. And sorry, to answer your question, there's about 3 of us that really work on stuff.
Awesome.
Getting back to sort of the nitty gritty stuff that's transferable from industry to industry, because I feel like the real estate space is very similar to the financial planning space where Landon's at, which is very similar to the consulting space where I'm at in terms of what it takes to actually build a business. So it could be cold calling, it could be content, it could be networking, and it could be a whole host of things. But I'm curious, and maybe we just go around the horn, Drew to Rusty, back to Travis. What would be like your top 2 or 3 tips for someone who's looking to get started in the entrepreneurial space, be it real estate or wherever, as to what you need to do to actually get things off the ground?
Travis and I just had a phone call with somebody who reached out to us that wanted to have a phone call with us for this exact topic. He's jumping into the mortgage space in a different industry or a different market, and wanted to pick our brains about this. We had a 15-20-minute phone call just a week ago about this. But I started out making 100 to 150 phone calls, cold calls a day. And sending out mailers to people I didn't know, and starting out that route. Now in my business now, and I guess what I would push is relationship building. Anybody who you are friends with on Facebook or you follow on Instagram, or your friend's parents, or just that past coworker from another job or another industry. those are your center of influence. And those are people that you want to reach and reach out to and get to know and ask questions to and see what value you can provide to. And just kind of building that center of influence, and that master list is probably your biggest first thing to do. You can go out and buy leads or work cold leads off of Google if you want, but I think what's going to create referrals, what's going to create past clients and repeat clients is building that center of influence and really keeping them close and leveraging on who you know and what you know. And don't be shy to tell people what you do. Don't be shy to spread what you do and talk to people and get to know them on a personal level outside of business as well.
When I was, and I have a follow-up question before I go over to Rusty, but when I was an advisor at Northwestern I was there for 7 years, but for probably the first 3, maybe even 4 years, let's just say I was an impressionable, 20, 21-year-old kid who was just like, okay, coach, right, did the things that I was told to do. And what I kind of, the realization that I had was, wow, every time I reach out to people now, it's because I want their time, their money, or their network. And it was such a lopsided relationship that ultimately made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And even like family members would respond to me less frequently because they knew that I had something that I was going to ask them for. And it just became unenjoyable. And then I focused on, I have this sort of analogy of, when you go to a bank, your deposits need to outweigh your withdrawals. Otherwise, they're going to kick you out because there's no money in there. So I kind of applied that to then relationship building, to your point, which is trying to make as many deposits as possible, trying to advance as many relationships on any given day, That way, when I go in for whatever my withdrawal is now, it doesn't feel lopsided. If anything, it feels lopsided in the opposite direction, where they're like, oh, finally, I can help you now. So my question after providing some of that context is, what are some of the things, like, because you come across people in your industry and they either need to be in a position to buy or sell a home. And that doesn't come every single year with people. It typically is a 5 to 10 year sort of sales cycle after you get them in a home. It's like, hey, 5-10 years down the road, maybe I'll help them again. But there's referral opportunity in between. So my question is, what are some of the things that you're doing within your network to provide value outside of what it is that you're compensated for, as a means to stay relevant and helpful so they think of you when they should be thinking of you?
Probably the biggest one that I've ever done was a referral came from a friend that I know that knows 5 or 7 other real estate agents. And actually happens to be my neighbor and somebody that I went to high school with and whatnot. So kind of a small knit community, but they sent me a referral and I really wasn't expecting it. And in kind of the way that I paid it forward with having, a construction background, doing renovations and additions for other people, I turned around and GC'd a complete home renovation for them for free. And just giving value where you can, helping clients out. Rusty and I have a Rolodex of contractors and people, and we love sharing those. We love sharing our connections and love sharing our contractors and people that we use in our portfolio that can provide value to these past clients, future clients, referrals. The other part of it is, a lot of times being in real estate, when you run into somebody or you have a connection with somebody and they, whether it's a friend, whatever, they oftentimes will ask you, hey, so how's the market, Drew? Hey, how's real estate? And my reply to them is, hey, I'm curious, why are you asking that question? Oh, well, you're in real estate. We just ran into each other and, this person was buying or selling and it made me think of you. And okay, cool. Well, hey, want to know why you're asking so I can respond in a positive way. Obviously answer your question, but also, they're asking for a reason. They're asking you why is the market good, or why is the market bad, or what do you think? They're asking you because they trust you, they want your opinion, or for some reason your name popped up when they thought about real estate. And you can turn around in that and turn it on them and say, hey, how's your job? How's your family? And remember that. And once you've had that conversation, I have a note on my phone with my transaction coordinator. And every time I run into somebody that I know, or have a conversation with somebody that I know, or go out to dinner with somebody, a follow-up card gets sent to them. And it's, hey, it was Landon, you're about to get one here in the next couple of days because I ran into you at Salted Edge a couple weeks ago.
Andy bought shots for the table as well, so he doesn't have to do that. But I was going to interject some things there. But yes.
But yeah, I mean, the note that's going out to Landon is, hey, man, it was a brand new restaurant in town that people have been ranting and raving about here in Omaha. And it was amazing. But yeah, happened to run into Landon and his wife and some friends that were out for a birthday dinner for somebody else. So yeah, in the next couple of days, Landon's going to get a card at his house that says, hey, man, it was great to see you guys at Salted Edge. We thought that dinner was amazing. If you guys liked it too, maybe let's put something on the books to go there together next time. Just little things like that, that just add value outside of the industry.
So you just told him what he's in for Christmas, right? You just told him what he's
yeah. Right. and I'll add to that, just because, again, knowing Drew personally, first as a friend, and then, ultimately now we began to work together. The thing that I like and why I have referred opportunities to Drew is, one, he's not a bullshitter, right? I mean, he's going to tell you what he can and can't do. He's not out above his skis and thinks he needs to do everything. And one good example is a very good friend and client of mine, had a large liquidation event with a business sale, was looking to, get into the real estate space. First person I told him to call. I mean, Drew knows this, no secret. I know many realtors, right? But I was like, you need to call Drew, because Drew will shoot you straight. He was looking kind of in that short to midterm tenant space. And Drew, again, not being too big, he introduced him to somebody down actually in your neck of the woods, David, in Florida. And he's just honest with people. Like, if it's not his wheelhouse, he's going to say, well, you know what? I'm not ego driven enough where I have to have the deal. I'll find you somebody. Right. So he does what he says he's going to do. And he gives a shit. I think there's a lot of, synergies there between how I work with clients and how he does. And it's appreciated,
Yeah, I think it's just taking that extra step to prove that you actually care about the person, on the other side of the conversation. Rusty, go ahead.
I was just saying, make it personal. Don't make it all about yourself. Don't make it always about business. It doesn't need to always be about business. They'll remember that you're in real estate, or they'll remember whatever kind of sales you're in. They'll remember that. But make it personal, and they'll come back to you. But yeah, move on.
For sure. Rusty, what are some of your business building tips that worked out for you?
So I would say for me, I was always like the crazy party weird guy who would everything. And so it took me a while to kind of build that reputation, because people like knew me as Crazy Rusty. And then here all of a sudden I was trying to, get into a business where I'm helping people buy and sell their biggest asset in their life. So for me, it was learning what I didn't know and really taking it like geeking out on this stuff and trying to get better every single day. And now we kind of have a motto of, be better than the internet. As you guys know, there's so much, fluff and BS that's out there. Like, we need to be the people connecting the dots, So if someone comes to you, Landon, and they want to, your take on Bitcoin or whatever, and people read headlines, they really don't get into articles anymore. So I think a big part is being able to connect the dots for people. Piggybacking on Drew, he is one of the best networkers I know. I think his screen time on his phone is probably 23 hours a day. But nonetheless, he stays in touch with people. I'm the old guy. I like to put the phone down when I can. But for me, it's been like a passion thing, right? It's knowing about the investments and getting your hands dirty and going through it so you can really prescribe to people. And maybe that means talking them out of buying or selling. A good friend of mine went through a renovation he thought he could do. He's panicking, freaking out, wanted to sell it a couple years ago. I'm like, dude, just chill out, man. Just take it one step at a time, a little more effective planning. So, you know, when you hit that level of honesty with people and, you know, you're not all about pushing the sale, but you're truly doing what's right, I think that comes around full circle, you know, in the future. And I think that applies to a lot, you know, pretty much any business, you know, don't just invest all of your stuff over here. Maybe we need to dissect it, or maybe it is a little bit here, a little bit in real estate. So I would say that's my take on it.
Awesome. Travis, what about you?
Just do the easy shit. I think that was kind of one of the things that that resonated early on, and the phone and answering it. Like, I'm a hyper freak about making sure I try to pick up every single call. My texts are on my computer screen at all times. My emails are right here. So both sides of my screen is text and email, and in the middle is where I work. So at any second, I mean, I even save little screenshots. I know it's stupid, but I've got a brag book that I keep just for myself of people. Geez, dude, that's super quick. Oh my God, I didn't even know you're awake at that hour. And I'm like, you know, that's the stuff. I mean, you guys text your banker and see how long it takes to get back. I mean, I know that that it, to some people, and maybe it's like, geez, you're always on your phone. Well, I'm on my computer too, and iPad and my watch. I can at least respond to. But like, that was just the little stuff that people want to do all this sexy stuff, like, you know, this marketing, and they focus on this new shiny object. At the end of the day, like, just, you know, just doing the easy stuff and being consistent with boring stuff like that has been really helpful in my business. And like Rusty said, just being open and honest with people. Just the phone call I had before this, Rocket Mortgage was charging them like $8,000 in origination, you know, which is just an upfront fee to lower your rate. And I said, hey, rates are probably going to be down in the next year or two, and you're break even on paying all this upfront just to save whatever, couple $100. That's like 5 years down the road. So I'm like, if you're going to refinance in a year, why are you going to pay all this money up front and give them just some real data that they can turn around and they're like, you're our guy, man. Like, this is what we needed. I said, oh, by the way, wait, there's more. My insurance broker is going to call you and work on the insurance and save them a couple $100. So the easy stuff's right there. You just got to, you know, do it and not get all focused on all this shiny object stuff. So that's been my key to success. I think is just always picking up that phone and responding back to people. It drives me nuts when I can't get a hold of people.
It's
you know they're on their phone, right? We all are.
One thing that Travis said in there that I picked up on was consistency. The biggest thing that you can do is be consistent. Don't send out marketing cards to a neighborhood for 3 months out of the year and then switch and say, okay, that didn't work. Now I'm going to pay for canceled and expired listing contact information and do that for 5 months and say, well, I only got one listing off of that in 5 months, and then go do something else. Stick to your guns, be consistent, hit it hard, and give it the time that it needs before you jump ship and trade to something else, and make sure that you completely execute it and give it your full attention before you say, okay, this actually didn't work. A lot of times what I see or hear from agents on our team or, you know, other people is, you know, and Rusty, we've talked about this too. It's like, did you really give it? Did you just give it the old college try? Or did you actually put 120% into that? And if you didn't put actually 120% into that, go back and at least give it 100%, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to that avenue to exhaust it before you move on.
Well, think about it too.
Trying to do 20 different things at 60% isn't as good as doing 3 things at 90%.
And think about it too. And then, Travis, I want to go back and comment on something that you shared as well. But with the consistency aspect, think about you do this thing for 6 months and then it doesn't work, right? And then you go and do something else for 6 months, doesn't work, and you just keep doing that. You fast forward 3, 4, 5 years. Whatever you start next, you're starting at zero. Right. There's, I don't know if you've heard of the book, 3 Feet from Gold. It's a really good book. When you've probably seen the meme where they got the pickaxe, there's 2 guys going through a tunnel. One of them turned around and he was like this close from the gold, when he turned around and the other guy, is still at it, and he ultimately gets it. But like people, and I think it's our short attention span, Instagram, TikTok scrolling culture where we just assume it's going to, happen sooner rather than later. And it's like, no, this shit takes time. And you have to be willing to put in that effort, fall in love with the process, and trust that the results, will come, assuming that what you're doing is actually, productive. But Travis, there's something, so you said doing the easy stuff, and I wasn't sure where you were going with that, and, just responding in a timely manner. And because in any industry, and particularly real estate and the mortgage space, like this is an excitingly stressful time for people. And when there's a lot of time between an outreach from them to your response, it gives them time to let their mind wander and sort of, create a narrative that you could have interjected and helped with. And there's two examples. One, and Landon, I actually told you about this when I went out with Rich Hawley in Tampa. We went to this restaurant called the Meat Market. It's like this super bougie, upscale, like steakhouse style vibe. And it's my first time ever there. And the manager came over, greeted Rich. Rich has this big, boisterous personality, so people know him. And the manager came over, introduced himself to me, came over to the table at some point, was like directed to me like, hey, how are you liking it here so far? And I was like, hey, it's great. On the way out, he's like, hey, here's my card. If you ever want to, make a reservation, just text me directly. And I was like, oh, cool. Feel a little important, right? Don't have to go through Open Table or any of that shit. So I was talking to a group of friends and I was like, hey, let's try this place out for dinner, because I went for lunch before, and let's go check it out. Texted the guy, texted me right back, yep, you're all set. We show up there, and again, it's a bougie upscale place, and there was, I think, six of us that went, and we spent like $2,500 there, all because the manager made me feel important. I corralled a group of people that are now going to go there in perpetuity. And it's just kind of ironic, Travis, to your other example, text your banker, see how long it takes him to respond. My banker responds like that when I text him. And as a result, I've introduced so many people to my bank. And that's the thing I tell them. I was like, if you ever need anything, fuck the 1-800 number, you just text Matt. Now, unfortunately, that bank is First Republic. That was just taken over by JP Morgan Chase because they went under. But after, when that happened, I texted him and, shared, kind words, of course, because he's going through a transition. And I asked, am I still going to be able to text you? And he's like, yep, 100%. So it just goes to show like little things like that, where you can make people feel special, make people feel important. It doesn't just impact them. It impacts all the people that they talk to about that, because that's an experience that's worth sharing. Whereas if you do what you say you're going to do, cool, that would be my expectation, right? That you do the shit that you're going to say. But when you go above and beyond, then it's actually worth talking about to others.
Yeah. And I would say that Drew, for you and Rusty, that's what's, I think, Rusty refers himself as the old guy that wants to put his phone down, but you and I are a lot alike, right? And anybody that knows me knows that I'm an acquired taste, right? People generally either they really like me or they really don't. And I'm okay with that, right? And I've always said, my thought is eliminating competition through authenticity, right? So I'm good either way, right? I'm going to be me no matter what. But I think that does, it gets people in or it gets people out. And ultimately, I think you guys obviously are a very good team and example of that. Like Rusty's not going to change his ways of who he is. He wants to put the phone down every now and then. You're going to always be a socialite and do what you do. And it's probably a great synergy for you too.
10 years. Give him 10 years. Well,
once the new babe gets a little older. Yeah.
I got 10 years on this guy. So.
And Travis, you were going to piggyback on something. I think I heard you trying to interject.
Yeah, just like the nights and weekends thing. I mean, in our industry, that's when deals are made. People are out looking at houses nights and weekends. And if you're not answering and responsive, I've literally won deals somebody just thanked me yesterday. She's like, we couldn't have done this without you. There's no way that seller would have, accepted this offer. Making that phone call to the seller's agent, explaining the strength of the deal, walking them through why we're doing what we're doing. And then I was going to say something else about being hyper responsive. But I lost my train of thought there. So
I'm like you, Travis.
It's different because before I forget again, but like if they come to me and they talk to me for 30 minutes, they get all this information and they start texting me and I'm just hyper responsive, and they get a call from Rocket or they get a call from this bank or something, and they're not getting that speed anymore. I've set the bar so freaking high that they can't work with them because they don't operate at that level. So now I'm just the bar is that much higher than any of these other places are going to ever operate.
Can never provide too much value, and you can never communicate enough or over communicate. Those are two things that you can never overdo.
Even if it's so on that note, Drew, so, we've all heard the saying like, hey, trust takes time, right? It takes time. I disagree with that. I think trust is based on the accumulation of experiences, and you have the opportunity to condense those experiences to bend time in your favor to skyrocket trust. So to your point, and I don't know the mortgage or the real estate process inside and out, but even if it's a meaningless update in the process of something that's happening, just shooting a text, an email, quick call. Hey, just so you know, we received your paperwork and it's now been submitted to XYZ or whatever the hell the process is. Just communicating that, it adds another touch point. Hey, just so you know, we had submitted it and it's been received by the other party. They're reviewing it and we'll let you know as soon as, the next step happens, as opposed to, yep, it started. Yep, now it's done. You missed 3, 4, 5, 6 opportunities in between to just drop a quick little nugget, condense that time and have another touch point, to earn their trust. So to the over communication point, I wholeheartedly agree.
Even outside of business, this sounds probably kind of weird, but like one of my favorite things to do outside of business is give referrals to other people. You don't have to go to the painter and say, hey man, I sent Johnny your contact. Hey man, I've sent your name out 4 times this week. That doesn't need to be done. But like my favorite thing to do, well, not my favorite thing, but I think it's funny. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think it goes a long way, is to provide a referral to somebody who's looking for something that has nothing to do with me and has nothing to do with real estate. I was recently at a conference in Hawaii, and one of the keynote speakers was talking about how this is a guy who, he's netting a couple million a year. So he's got this guy who shops for clothes for him. And this business who knows every size of everything, and he's in there a couple times a month and they spec clothes for him and whatnot. But that guy posted about wanting to buy a new car, and he specifically said, I'm looking for a new Range Rover. Well, the guy at that clothing store sent him the general manager's cell phone number from the local Range Rover dealer in their city on a 3-way text, said, hey, this guy's looking for a Rover. The guy had him in there within 3 or 4 days, had a Range Rover for him. The guy at the clothing store found out that he said, hey, thanks for the referral, invited him in, had his favorite bottle of wine popped and ready to go. Congrats on the new car. Here's what I expect for you for the week. Like that is a class of service that like it's unmatchable. So like if somebody is looking for something on Facebook or needs advice on something, or, you hear about somebody needing something. Hey, I heard through the grapevine that, you're doing this or wanting this. Here's a referral for you if you need another set of instructions or somebody else to get an opinion on or whatever else. And those kind of things can go a long way and don't have anything to do with me or real estate, but it can help somebody else out. And those are the types of things that people remember.
And if you
it goes back to David
yourself,
saying making those deposits, right? That's all you're doing. You're just making a deposit there in that relationship.
Yep, exactly.
And and think too, like, if you can be that person that oh yeah, I got a guy, I got a gal, I got someone, no matter what their needs are. I mean, Landon, not to put you on the spot, but when we were chatting, I think you had mentioned something about how when you had built and developed your house, you had saved like 50 or 150 grand or something just because of your connections and your connections where you pieced everything together, got some sweetheart deals here and there. And as a result, you got a banging deal on your house, yep. as you were constructing it. So being someone of value isn't just about what you know, but it's who do you know that can also help people. And even though that person that you're making the introduction to is delivering the value is ultimately associated with you, the connector, in that equation.
I always say I like to be Bobby Beans. If you guys have ever seen the movie Two Guns, right? That's Denzel's character, right? I know a guy, right? So if you could be Bobby Beans, that's never a bad, but in my case, right? I'm only willing to put my name on the line if I trust, a Drew or whoever I'm introducing them to. So for me, it speaks volumes of the individuals I'm introducing because I'm putting my name on the line. I feel like by making that introduction. So yeah.
Love it. Well, gentlemen, I feel like we could keep talking. And I want to make sure I don't have it scheduled yet, but at some point, probably in Q1 of next year, I'll be flying out to Omaha. So if our schedules happen to align, would love to, get together, break some bread, have a drink. But
I'll take you to Salted Edge.
Amen.
All right, cool.
Amen. Boys, thank you again for the time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. For everyone listening, appreciate your time and attention, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces.